Terry for doing such an awesome job of filling in for us. Jennifer begins in just a couple of weeks, but Terry said, you know, if you'd like, I can help you with those vowels. And so she has, so we're grateful for that. But we are here in our home stretch in a series on evangelistic attitudes. Today we are going to be talking about the ministry of hospitality. And I'm going to invite you to stand as you are able as we read the gospel, which is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 11 through 24. This will be a familiar story to most of us. Try to hear it with new ears. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had, and he traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property on dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. And so he went and he hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But then he came to himself and said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. And so he set off. He went to his father.
She's not in there. I think she.
But while he was still afar off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran, and he put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.
That's all right. Yeah.
But the father said to his slave, quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and let us celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he is found. And they began to celebrate. The word of the Lord. You may find your seat. There is nothing in this world like coming home after a long journey. I remember, for instance, when I was in Boy Scouts as a teenager, and our troop went on a 90-mile backpacking trek in Philmont Scout Ranch. I imagine some of you, at least one of us here, has been to Philmont Scout Ranch. For 7 days, we were out hiking on the dusty trails. There were no showers, there were no baths. We were mostly eating dehydrated food. To keep our weight down, to keep what we had to haul back and forth down, we limited ourselves to 2 pairs of underwear. One to wear and one to clean, if you could find the time and the water to do it. I will never forget returning home after that trip. My parents greeted me at the door with hugs and kisses, and my mother cooked fried chicken, one of my favorite meals. I'll never forget the simple joy of indoor plumbing and a hot shower, all followed by a good night's rest in my own clean, soft, cushy bed. That was a great welcome home. And then there was the return home from Korea, when with then 4-year-old Benjamin, our son, and our 6-month-old Matthew, after an equally exhausting week at the adoption agency. We'd already been in the air for about 20 hours on the airplane by the time we arrived at that beautiful mecca of all airports, O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. It was raining. Oh, no, that doesn't do it justice. It was pouring. No, actually, think about a deluge of biblical proportions. We were scheduled to have a brief layover in Chicago. However, Our flight, along with most of the others, was canceled. And then we, along with every other stranded traveler that day, began the mad rush from ticket counter to ticket counter, from gate to gate, as they relocated and rearranged and canceled flights. Desperately, all of us seeking a flight somehow out of this place. 6-month-old Matthew was crying. Rebecca was melting down. Think of nuclear fusion. And Ben kept holding her hand and saying, "It's okay, Mommy, it's going to be all right." God bless Ben. Finally, one ticket agent saw our impending implosion, had mercy upon us, and booked us on a flight out of town and put us on a cart to get to the right gate. Finally, after about 30 hours of travel with 2 little children, we landed in Wichita, Kansas at about 3 a.m. in the morning. Our welcome party that began about 25 strong dwindled down to about 3 of our very best friends. But there they were, ready to welcome us, holding up banners saying, "Welcome home, Matthew!" And they whisked us off into their cars and drove us the additional half hour to home. There, Rebecca's parents fed us something. I don't know what it was. I have no recollection, but it was food. They fed us, and they eagerly took Matthew and Ben off our hands while we collapsed into our beds for 14 hours of straight sleep. That was probably the best welcome home and most wonderful hospitality that we've ever received. That hospitality might have just saved our lives. And yet, even these great welcomes pale in comparison to that of Luke chapter 15. Luke 15 is often mislabeled as the parable of the Prodigal Son, probably because we are more interested in the sins of the Son than in the grace of the Father in this story. But it is the Father who is very clearly the hero of this story, this parable. It really should be called the parable of the gracious Father and the awesome welcome home. The story begins, as you know, with a louse of a son who asks his dad for his share of the inheritance. Now, in the ancient Near Eastern world, you have to understand that a child never received his inheritance. It was a him. Never received his inheritance until the parent, the father, actually died. And so when the son is asking for his inheritance from his father, he is actually saying to his dad, "Dad, I hope that you go out and kick the bucket today or tomorrow." And you thought your kids were bad, right? But the father, remarkably, wisely, grants the son's wish and gives him his share of the inheritance. You know how the story goes. The kid parties day and night for months on end. A bad famine arises in the land, and all of his partier friends abandon him. In desperation, he gets a job feeding pigs, the most unclean of all animals if you're a Jewish person. The kid's so hungry that he wishes that he could have some of the pig slop. I mean, this is rock bottom if you're a Jewish guy. Finally, the boy comes to his senses and concocts a plan to come back and ask dear old Dad for a job as a hired hand. Now, there were 3 levels of slavery back in that day, and a hired hand was the lowest level of slavery. A normal slave was at least considered on some level to be part of the family, but a hired hand was never considered part of the family, could be fired at will with no notice and no compensation. But the son knows that it's his only option. And so he rehearses his speech over and over and over in his mind as he's traveling back home to his father. "Father," he says in his head, "I have sinned against you and against heaven, but I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands." The son is bracing himself. He's bracing himself not only for a rebuke from his father, but also from that of the whole village. Because you see, when the son disrespected the father, the son dissed the whole village, basically. He broke all of their social norms. And so he knows that as soon as the village begins to see him, they're going to start lining up on the road to taunt him in word and in song, and probably to throw a couple rocks just because they can. Now, here's where the story begins to get interesting. Even scandalous if we were a person of this day. Because Jesus tells us that the Father saw the Son while he was still a far way off. Still a far way off. How could that possibly be? You would have thought that this Father would have long ago written off this Son as dead. As dead and would be out in the fields working. But he hasn't somehow. The Father sees him from a long, long way off. How could that be? He sees him because he's been scanning the horizon all of these years, praying for his son's safe return. Think of parents who keep searching for their son who's missing in action in combat, right? They hope beyond hope, don't they, that their son will return. Everyone else is telling them to move on, let it go. They keep praying, they keep hoping, they keep pestering the government, they keep working for his return, because a parent's love for their child is unending. Can't just be. The Father sees his Son, and his heart leaps within him. Verse 20 says that he was filled with compassion. The Greek word literally means his bowels went out to him. His bowels, we would say his heart went out to him. He longed to embrace his son, and so he does something that no self-respecting older gentleman in the ancient Near Eastern world would do. He runs to him. He runs to him in his long flowing robe. I mean, I've almost tripped on this robe, making it up these steps. He's going down a dirty, dusty road with potholes everywhere. He runs to his son, humiliating himself rather than watching his son be humiliated. He runs down that road of shame that all of those villagers are eagerly lining up upon with curse words on their lips and rocks in their hands. Exhausted and bruised and likely bleeding, he reaches his son before the first rock flies. He embraces him and he kisses him repeatedly. In the ancient Near Eastern world, if two men were having an argument and then they reconciled, it was part of the public ceremony of reconciliation that they would embrace and that they would kiss one another on the cheek. The Father's action then tells the whole village that this son is forgiven. There will be no rocks thrown today. The son begins to recite his speech, but he is so moved by his father's actions, his love, that he abandons his plan to negotiate his new employment as a day laborer, a hired hand. There is no negotiation with a love so great as the Father's. There is only surrender. And so the prodigal cut short his speech with the line, "I'm not worthy to be called your son." No mention of a hired hand. The son's right, of course. He's not worthy. But the father will have nothing of it. He commands his slaves to put the best robe on the boy. Now all who were hearing this parable from Jesus' lips would understand exactly what the best robe was. The best robe was the Father's robe. He had the best robe of all. The robe that he wore on feast days and grand occasions. And so when the party would begin, later that evening with the fatted calf. The guests will now welcome the son as if it is the father who is greeting them at the entranceway to the tent. Next, the father orders a ring and shoes for the boy. The ring is most likely a signet ring, which was used to seal all contracts in the ancient world. This is like giving a kid who's just out of rehab Dad's American Express card. Congratulations, son. And finally, the shoes. Slaves were never given shoes. Only family members were given shoes. And so we have the Negro spiritual, which dreams of the day when what? When all of God's children have shoes. Because shoes represent freedom. Shoes represent dignity. No, dear friends, this is not, never call it the parable of the prodigal son. This is the parable of the gracious Father and the awesome welcome. And if you've ever gone off into a far country, or if you've ever felt like you're in a far country, you don't have to wonder anymore whether God will welcome you back or not. He's never stopped looking for you. Not for one moment has He stopped looking for you. And He'll run the gauntlet of shame for you so that you can be forgiven and accepted. Not only spiritually, but by a whole community, by the whole community of God. Indeed, this parable that Jesus told reveals the very heart of God. A heart that seeks to remove every barrier and every impediment to welcoming those that are far from the Father back home. Is that your heart? Is that the heart of St. Paul? Is those who have been welcomed by God with such outrageous grace? It is our honor, and it is our privilege, and indeed, it is our duty, our responsibility, to extend the same lavish grace to welcome others back home. But what does that look like on a practical level? What does it really mean to extend grace and hospitality to others? To, as a church, offer an awesome welcome? Well, let's start by saying that it looks like the person who regularly leaves the comfort of their own social circle to find newcomers on Sunday morning and welcome them to church. Now, of course, we all know that every congregation in the United States of America, and probably in the world, considers itself the friendliest congregation of all time, correct? Right? And I have no doubts that St. Paul is better than most, probably. And yet, we too are far from perfect. A few months ago, for instance, I had a father who reported to me with a heavy heart an instance where his daughter had come to worship here at St. Paul. And afterwards, when we had our cookies and punch and goodies over in Fellowship Hall, he watched with a broken heart as everybody kept chatting amongst themselves with their friends, while the daughter and her child were alone. Needless to say, she hasn't been back, and I don't blame her. A great welcome reaches out on Sunday morning, right? A great welcome also looks like greeters and ushers who give their very best every single day that they're here at church. Membership and Evangelism is working on this. Right now, our greeters and our fellowship hosts, our food hosts, are one and the same here. And God bless our fellowship hosts, but the way it's set up now, they're lucky if they can get from the kitchen after getting set up for food, back here 10 minutes before worship to greet people. And if they do make it, they're probably hurried and making, worried that their dip isn't going to spoil by the time we get back. It's not their fault. It's just that we need to separate these two jobs from one another, and we're working on that. But if the truth be told, the best welcome begins even before people walk into the building. It begins in the parking lot with parking lot greeters who offer a special greeting and directions as soon as people are out of the car. You may think that's extravagant, but I'll tell you what. Go to any of the upstart churches in Johnston, Iowa, and they'll have a parking lot greeter there. That's what a great welcome looks like. I wonder what it smells like. I know what it smells like. It smells like great coffee. Now, many of you have noticed Jerry Foley's awesome efforts, his crusade to bring us good coffee here at St. Paul. How cool has it been to have a friendly face offering a good cup of coffee with a lid, for those of you who are concerned about spilling, with the lid when you walk into worship. Let's hear it for Jerry the Jolly King. More to come, I hope. So that's what a great welcome looks like. It's what a great welcome smells like. But what does it sound like? Well, it sounds like worship and music that meets people where they are, rather than demanding that they somehow conform to where we are. And this is probably the toughest one of all. Because we all love our music, don't we? Oh, yes. We love our organ and we love How Great Thou Art and Just As I Am and Come Thou Font with our Ebenezer's, whatever that is, right? I love those songs. We love those songs. They're awesome songs. But the hard truth is that 20-somethings honestly don't really love that music, and it's musical style that our teens don't care for much. They need something a little bit livelier, folks. Now, you may argue that if only they would give our music a chance, that they would come to love it, and you probably are right. But the sad truth is, they're not going to give our music a chance. And if we want them in worship, we're going to have to add an all-contemporary component to our Sunday offerings. I know that's a lot, but remember the great lengths that the Father went to in their story to meet the Son where He was. He ran to the edge of the village, and when He met the Son, He didn't demand that He take on a shower before He put the best robe on Him. Rather, He accepted Him, dirt and pig smell and all. True hospitality meets people where they are. So after a lot of experimentation and study that was part of our revision report this past year, in June, session passed a motion that said that we are laying a foundation to add a second service here at St. Paul. The elders are terrified that I was going to tell that to you, but it's out of the hat now. Okay? The hat's out of the bag. They wanted me to keep it quiet. Tough! That's the motion we passed. We're going to lay a foundation for that. Now, before you panic, I want to tell those of you who are members here two things. First is, we will always have a worship service here at St. Paul with traditional music. We will never get rid of that. As long as there are people here who want to sing, Come Thou Font of Every Blessing, we're going to sing it and talk about Ebenezer's and all that. We're going to do all that. As long as there's people here who want that. No one's going to have to give up the music they love. The second thing I want you to hear is that this is going to take a little while. Maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now. Jennifer Scheid, our new music director, is going to help us rebuild our praise team. But that's going to take some time. And any new service is going to take a ton of planning and a ton of promotion. So don't panic, please. Just pray. I want to close with one final thought, and that is that there's one other thing that an awesome welcome looks like. And that's Wade's baptism that's going to happen in a few moments. Baptism is God's ultimate welcome. Because in baptism, God reaches out to the lost and to the lonely and engrafts them, involves them, encases them in a new family, the family of God. Wade, of course, was born to a great earthly family. I mean, look at them. They're here, an extended family and friends and all that. We know that that's so true. But today, he's also going to get a great spiritual family. the Holy Catholic Church, a communion, a global communion of people, of disciples of Jesus who are walking in the love of the Father to the glory of the Son by the power of the Holy Spirit. Welcome home, Wade. And how providential is it that Brittany, who will be starting as our new interim youth director shortly, will have a chance to cultivate the same welcoming environment for Wade and for other children and teens in our church that she received herself from saints here at St. Paul, people like Merton, Gene Hansen, and countless others who invested in her life. How cool is that that gets to happen shortly? Welcome back, Brittany and Travis. So today, God invites us all to remember our baptism. Remember that we all were once lost, lonely in a harsh world, utterly dependent upon others for our very survival, just like little Wade this morning. But God took us in, and God welcomed us, and God embraced us, and God gave us everything that we need in order to thrive and survive, a spiritual family to protect us and to guide us, to watch over us and encourage us. We now have the privilege of doing the same for others. Thanks be to God. Let's pray. Thank you guys for your love for us, for the awesome welcome that you've extended to us in Jesus Christ, for the tender heart that you have for us. Help us, O Lord, give us just a fraction of your heart for those that are outside of the fellowship of believers. Help us, Lord, to also offer an awesome welcome to those outside. We pray now, as we come shortly to the baptism of Wade, that your Holy Spirit might be palatable, that we might be able to sense and feel and experience your grace and your love and your power that you've given us. We pray all these things in Jesus' name.